Hi, I'm U.S. Senator Rob Portman. I'm here in Washington, D.C. today. I really wish I could be with you to discuss what we can do to end the horrific practice of human trafficking. I'm glad that EmpowerU Ohio is taking a closer look at this issue because it's a problem across our country, across Ohio, and even right here in Cincinnati, my hometown. Thank you for being here today, and I especially want to thank Judge Herbert, who you're going to hear from later on. As you probably know, Judge Herbert established what is called the Catch Court in Columbus. CATCH stands for Changing Actions to Change Habits, and it's designed to help people who are victims of trafficking overcome some of the many struggles they face. Things like finding housing and jobs, dealing with addictions and trauma. Judge Herbert, I want you to know I appreciate all you do. People like Judge Herbert understand the importance of these efforts for all of us. Trafficking's in the headlines today, but long before this problem was making national news, a lot of people in this room were working to build the community partnerships, grassroots organizations necessary to try to stop trafficking even before it starts. Much of that focus has been on helping prevent the exploitation of children and youth. I was at the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center recently and met with local coalition groups and law enforcement officials who are helping lead the effort to find and protect victims all over our state. I had the opportunity to talk about my legislation called Bringing Missing Children Home Act. It's a bill that improves law enforcement reporting and response procedures in the case of missing children by refining and streamlining how these cases are handled. Missing kids, as you know, are some of the most vulnerable to traffickers. We want to get to them and get them home. We're in a safe environment before it's too late. We've also got to do more for kids who are already victims. For too long, many children who were swept up into prostitution through human trafficking were treated like criminals instead of the victims that we know them to be. We've started to change that and change that dynamic by turning the national dialogue toward focusing on the question of how we protect the most vulnerable among them. In my view, there's no such thing as a child prostitute. That person is a victim of abuse who needs our help. Stopping human trafficking is an issue that should bring us all together, no matter what our politics are, our party are. There's a broad bipartisan consensus now that I see out there for anti-trafficking legislation. I see that in Washington. I certainly see it in the state of Ohio. About 3 years ago, I joined with Senator Blumenthal from Connecticut to form the Senate caucus to end human trafficking. We meet monthly, hold briefings on the progress that's being made around the country. We get the good work of partners on the ground around the country coming into Washington, telling us what they're doing, learning from those best practices. That has helped us to develop the legislation that we're now working on in Washington. We've already passed some legislation, but again, the work continues. Again, while I wish I could be with you for that event, I'm happy to report that we are making some progress on some of this, including legislation called Combat Human Trafficking, which is to strengthen law enforcement and efforts to investigate and prosecute those who commit sex trafficking crimes. Helping us put, by the way, this $32 billion human trafficking industry out of business. That's the estimate of what it is globally. The legislation, along with the legislation on missing children I talked about, are both part of the Justice for Victims of Trafficking Act, by the way, which is currently being debated on the floor of the Senate and I hope will pass very soon. Stopping trafficking, I think, is one of the great humanitarian and human rights causes of this century, the 21st century. We all have a role to play in this, and again, I want to thank you on leading the way here in your communities and across the state of Ohio. Godspeed in your really important work, and hope to see you back home really soon.